Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video, we are going to continue our look at painting the Primaris Outrider from the Warhammer 40,000 Indomitus box set. And as you can see, we are nearing completion of this guy, and in this video, we are going to work on painting the red elements of this model, such as the casing of his bolt pistol, the bolters on his bike, as well as his sword. Get us started, we're going to use some corn red and some rhinox hide. We're going to slap these both onto the palette. We are not mixing them together, on the palette anyway. And as you can see, I just take two little small dollops and throw them onto the palette, and just the dampness of the brush, just to thin the color ever so slightly. And basically I apply the red along the upper portion, and then apply a little layer of the rhinox hide along the lower portion. And initially I was going to use this small or medium dry brush or base coating brush to blend the two colors together and just basically run it along the surface. Once or twice would have done it, but in fact I made a little boo-boo and there was just a little bit too much water in the bristles, and so I was like, oh, gall darn it. Oh well. And so basically I come back with the rhinox hide, reestablish it along the bottom, and then quickly just grab some of the corn red and begin blending it right into the paint here. And you can see that I simply just used the same brush to draw from the rhinox hide into the corn red, you know, making it the color contaminated, but that's fine because we're going to be contaminating color all over the place anyway. So basically with this brush here, you can see how we've just created this really fast transition of color. Now with the pure corn red, I'm going to apply this over the upper portion of the detail, and then of course along the sides we're going to create these shadows. So I'm not bothering with any kind of the shading on the uppermost portions of each of the casings of the gun, as it were. And then of course I come back in, throw a little bit of the rhinox hide, and then just quickly blend it out with the same brush. I don't even bother rinsing it off. I just simply use the same brush and just draw the color across. And as it mixes, you can move it around and move it into spots you want, and you know, just kind of really kind of have fun with it. And if you've never really done a wet on wet blend as far as playing with your colors is concerned, these are the opportunities where, you know, you can obviously experiment with technique in these instances. Here on the casing for the chainsword, you can see I draw that color mostly the way up, and then with the rhinox hide I simply come in, bring it in, do a quick blend, and then I grab my medium base coating brush and then just simply feather it back. And you see I add a little bit of rhinox hide on that, but that's fine. Again, I just simply draw the color, and so majority of the red I drew into the rhinox hide to push that rhinox hide further down. We didn't really want the pure rhinox hide in the shadows, as it were. And again, I just simply either swap you know, the color onto the brush, or I simply come in with a, you know, another brush, clean and dry of course, and that's how you're going to maximize getting a nice efficient blend. Where we have some of the overlap on color, I just simply come in with corn red and lay it in and clean up the edges. And of course you can also break this down to a transition. I'm feathering this part here because I just wasn't happy with the overall blend along the bottom portion of the sword, and so there I simply create it and get a bit more of a transition going on there, brighten it back up to that nice bright corn red. But you can also break the corn red down to a glaze consistency and just glaze in some final transitions, as it were, and go along these edges and things like that. Like there's about 3 facets on that edge, and so there's an angled facet that runs, and I lay more brighter color onto that part. The casings for the bolt guns on the bike are done in a very similar fashion. Again, I lay a little bit of corn red and then come in with a little bit of rhinox hide and then quickly blend up. And if it's not where I want it, then I just simply grab a bit more of the corn red and blend it back down really, really fast. And as long as you're pretty fast and as long as you're fairly accurate, you should be able to achieve this blend fairly easily. As you can see there, it looks quite dirty, but that's fine because, again, if we really wanted to finesse these colors, yes, we could add retardant to these and slow the drying process down and give us plenty of time to work with the color, but I didn't really feel it necessary, as you know, we're nearing the end of this model, and personally whenever I start getting nearing the end of a project, I kind of start to get a little impatient as I work on final details here and there. And so I imagine some of you are probably in a similar fashion as well. But that is really about it as far as laying the transition down. We're not going to worry about, you know, any other kind of, transitions, as it were, on there. Wazdaka Red is next. We're going to slap this onto the palette and basically we are going to thin it out with just a bit of the moisture on the brush and begin doing a simple edge highlight on some of these raised areas. Initially, I was kind of playing with the idea of doing a highlight down one portion of the armor on the upper portions where we're going to build up to a brighter color, and we're highlighting this in a typical fashion in which, you know, we're bringing brightness along the raised areas in the upper portions of a detail, versus kind of like if we were doing it in like a non-metallic metal where basically you would reverse these colors. You would have the darker color above the brighter one and then do an edging around everything. I wasn't too concerned with that or doing anything like that. I just wanted to build up a nice solid subdued red, and that's the whole reason why using corn red in this instance is I really did not want an overly saturated red on these details, because we've built up a fair amount of subtlety in the tones we've used as far as the black, the dirt, the rust, everything like that. Really, the most contrasting elements are the shoulder pads and the symbol on the bike. It's denoting the obviously the chapter here, and you can see again I'm just simply using this like we've done in previous examples on this guy. I'm just using that and creating this kind of jittered highlight along those portions, again kind of simulating chipped armor and, you know, in an irregular surface. And then here I'm just simply picking out the back edge of the blade and again bring it closer towards the front. I do thin it out a little bit, make a glaze just to blend out the highlight just a little further, but otherwise it's a pretty typical affair. Here you can see again it's just simply catching the edges and also catching the bolts as well. Trying to be as neat as possible. Again, when you are getting into some of these areas, I am trying to be mindful of the camera as so I can demonstrate these things, but as you will be working on your own personal models, I don't think you have too much trouble. Wazdaka Red is next with Ushab T-Bone. It's a fun one to say, Ushab T. We're going to mix these in roughly a 2-to-1 mix ratio. We're going to go 2 red with 1 bone. I think we just used just the dampness of the brush to thin the color. I don't think I used any mediums or anything like that. And then here I'm simply applying this just at the very corners and bolt heads and things of that nature. It's a very, very fine line I'm creating along these details just to really kind of bring sharpness to those edges is really the only point of doing such a fine edge highlight on these areas. It's a very, very minimal amount of color we're laying down. Here you can see I'm trying to be very, very careful as I'm laying this color across the top edge of the gun casing, and I do the same thing for the bolters on the bike as well. And of course the sword, I'm simply just catching this forward edge. It's really kind of 3 faces on that blade. It's the very side where the teeth are, the very back, and then there's this bevel on the edge, and so this is where I'm really concentrating more of the color here is on that bevel. Bevel, is that the right word? And again, you can see it's just simply catching bolt heads and, you know, catching a bit of the edges. Now I do also a highlight on the edge with the teeth, and with this I simply go through and do a bit of an irregular kind of highlight. I'm just kind of stuttering along and, you know, just creating irregular highlights. But then I decide, you know what, let's put some chips in there and scrapes and, you know, scratches. So basically with this, and of course I've thinned the color down just a bit more with a little bit more water, and then I've drawn my brush through my painting rag, which is, you know, you can use like a paper towel, whatever, just to draw the excess moisture out of the brush. And then I use that and create those really fine lines. That's one way of, you know, making sure that you don't overdo it or oversaturate. Because sometimes just like a pen, the ink or the paint in the bristles can act like that, and it's holding, and the bristles hold onto that paint. And so as soon as you touch the surface, it'll just kind of bloop, pop out, and yeah, it can be a big pain. What are we using now? Oh yeah, Agrax Earthshade is next. This is the regular matte variety. I'm going to add a couple drops of Lamian Medium just to thin it out. I do not want it overly saturated, but I am going to apply it in a fairly generous fashion as I want it to creep within the recesses, catch the panel lines, and things of that nature. I'm still trying to be fairly deliberate where I'm applying it, but I'm not, you know, being too cautious as far as, you know, how I'm applying it. Really, it's just, you know, I'm kind of, because it's already very thinned out, I'm not too concerned over it. I'm not too worried about the pool. Here on the sword, I'm simply drawing the color back towards where it's getting darker, so just in case that it does build up, that we get a nice saturated end towards the handle. And so with that, this resaturates the color, gets into all those little nooks and crannies, and of course once it's dry, we have this nice subdued red on the The bike itself, I don't think, if we would have went with a normal kind of red, like if we went with Mephiston red and Evil Sun Scarlet, this would have been way too bright and a little too saturated and too funny. So for anybody out there who's doing Black Templars and you want nice, nice color on your gun casings and weapons and things like that, I always like the red fashion. It's kind of like what you see out of the codexes, but this way is a little bit more subdued and a little bit more fun. Big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below, and there are varying tiers of support, and a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.